Hello there, welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly, and tonight I'm excited to create layout number 5 in the Memory Lane series. We're using the Memory Lane product bundle, and I reviewed all of the products in that bundle in a previous video that I'll link in the description, as well as all of the videos, layouts 1 through 4. Let's do a quick recap. So last week we created this beautiful layout with our granddaughter Maya Jean and her lucky cowgirl hat. We did floral clusters, we did a little stenciling, some inking, and some sponging techniques. Then we created a layout featuring Gracie May, our oldest granddaughter's senior pictures, and the focus of this layout was to use very simple backgrounds to create stunning layouts. We did some color coordinating with some color families, we used some journal strips, and a little bit of stenciling in this layout as well. We also created in this series a layout featuring our youngest grandson, Waylon James, playing in a cardboard box. This was a part of the Everyday Moments series, and we did a traditional grid and used some watercolor wash techniques with our ink pads that carried over from this first layout, which featured our son and the purchase of his first home. And we did watercolor wash houses and used some scribble circles. Okay, so tonight I want to create a little bit of a rolling hill, and I want to use the two houses that are included in the stamp set that is included in the bundle. So I'm starting around the 2-inch mark and going up, down, and back up again to the 2-inch mark to create a little bit of a rolling hill with my pencil. Again, I'm going up, down, up, down, and back to that 2-inch mark. And I'm actually doing both sides because I'm going to do some stamping with the intense black ink of those houses. So I have my Versamat in the back, and it's on the soft side with my all-purpose mat over the top, and I'm going to actually come a little bit below that rolling hill line, and I'm going to stamp a variety of those houses. I'm flipping my block over to one kind of a house and then flipping it back over to the other kind of the house. I have one house on one side of the block and the other house on the other side of the block, just because I'm too lazy to switch blocks, and I just want to kind of go back and forth. Some of them are duplicated, some of them are different. And now I'm going to turn the paper over, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just following my pencil line, then I'll be erasing the pencil line, and then I'll be fussy cutting around the tops of those houses, leaving the hills intact. And you're going to see here in just a little bit what this prep work is going to be for. We're just prepping some pieces that are going to create this great border with some houses, and we're focusing tonight on color or not to color. And I actually am trying to decide whether or not I want to have the color in the houses or if I want the color on the layout itself. So now you can see here that I fussy cut the tops out, and I think it makes these adorable transition pieces. So looking in my little bin here, I don't have that much left from layouts 1 through 4. I have some watercolor wash, stamped flowers. I have a few Seabrook, rosemary, and sage leaves. I have one dragonfly left that we actually did watercolor wash on the vellum. I have a few trees left from that first and second layout that I did, and that's about all that I have. So I'm looking through the layouts that we've completed to this point to decide what I want to add for bits. I can make some more of those watercolor flowers. I can make some more watercolor houses. I could make some more sponge dauber flowers like on this one that we created on that layout. I could use Cricut flowers that we used on this layout and some additional Cricut leaves. There are so many things. We could add the stickers. We could do some more of those sponged flowers. I am thinking that anything is going to look amazing, but I think I'm going to go with both. I'm going to use the watercolor flowers, but I'm going to actually cut a few more of the Cricut leaves and flowers from some of the other layouts. I'm going to use the exact same size, some of the exact same colors. So I did some rosemary, some sage, and some Seabrook, and then I made some of those additional flowers just like I made in the previous layout. And I just am going to show you just a couple, because in the previous video from the last layout, I showed you how I did some pouncing and sponge daubing on the ends of those leaves. Now I'm using sage tonight, and I'm using the sage ink on the Seabrook leaves, the rosemary leaves, and the sage leaves, and I'm just pouncing a little bit on those edges to add a little bit of color to add to our bits bin. We needed more bits in our bin. I'm not going to use all of those that I've created, but there's actually going to be a layout 6 in the series, so I figured I would make some more just in case I need those for layout 6. Now I'm pulling out my Ballerina ink, and I want to use my, instead of the mini ink blending tool, I want to use my blending brush and just add a little bit of the Ballerina ink to the edges of those flowers. And I'm doing that to the peach flower front as well as the white daisy flower back. And you can see the full process and technique on these flowers in the previous video that's linked in the description, but I just wanted to do a little mini recap. So now you can see our bits bin is full again. So we have quite a few little bits to choose from, and I'm not exactly sure at this point in the video which bits I'm going to use, but now we have plenty of pieces to use, and you can see how those pieces look all put together. So now let's go ahead and get some measurements out of the way, but first let's take a peek at the photos that I want to use. So I have my granddaughters Avery Jean, Hattie Elaine, and Ramsey Kate, and here is Pepper. And the girls were getting ready to go to church, and so my daughter Emily was going to snap their photo, but of course Pepper decides he wants to be in the photo. So it is a progression of photos from him barely getting in there to disrupting the whole photo. She finally does get a great photo of all three of them without Pepper. And so I thought it would be so cute to do the little series and put that little photo progression together of Pepper just starting to get in the photo, and then Hattie Elaine going into Avery Jean for help, and then Ramsey Kate deciding to bail on the whole scene, and then making that larger photo the focal of the right page. So let's go ahead and get the sizes out of the way. So I have 1.5 inch strips by 12 inch of the I think it's peach or melon pattern there, and then a striped zip strip, and our zip strips are always 1/2 inch, so they're 1/2 by 12, 2 of those, and then I have 8 of each of those pieces shown below that are 1 1/4 by 2 of all of the different patterns. And then for photo mats, I did decide to resize on my PictureMate 400 the photos to 2 3/4 by 3 3/4. So I have a peach photo mat that is 3 by 4, and then I have a Seabrook photo mat that is 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, because I'm going to double mat those photos. So again, I resized those photos on my PictureMate to 2 3/4 by 3 3/4, the 4 photos that are going to go on the left page that show the initial part of the series, and then the larger photo that actually ends up going on the right is going to be a 5 by 7. And so I'm happy with those, but I do want to add some additional large photo pieces. We're going to have those houses that we created as a transition, but I have created a 9.5 by 10 inch white daisy piece, and I'm going to mat that with a 9 3/4 by 10 1/4 peach piece, and then I'm going to mat that again with a 10 by 10.5 sage piece. So they're just a 1/4 of an inch larger as you go. And then I'm going to mat those 3, and that's going to be the base. We're going to maybe add some treatments to that. I'm 99% sure that we're going to add some stenciling to that. But we're going to flip these around, and I'm going to have the larger photo on the right and then the series of photos with pepper on the left. So I'm going to arrange the 1 1/4 by 2 inch strips here on the bottom, and we have a couple options. I'm just going to kind of offset these colors so that like the greens aren't right next to each other and the stripes aren't right next to each other, and I want them to be arranged with maybe about a 1/4 of an inch between the two of them. It isn't going to be a perfect science, but we have some options. So I've grabbed a couple pieces of scrap pattern paper. So two current trends are either to tear the paper or to bend the paper and make kind of like a little ribbon looking end. So I think both of those techniques would be so cute, and they're both super popular trends right now. So I'm envisioning those little fussy cut house border with the transition strips, and either the rounded ribbon, folding those in half into like a rounded ribbon, or the torn strips to be on the bottom of that. I love both looks, and I'm trying to decide which way to go. I don't know. And I do end up deciding to go with the torn ends, but hey, you do you, because both of those would be so cute. I would really like both of those techniques. So I think that I'm going to go with the torn ends, and I'm going to arrange the houses on the left. Now the houses on the right are going to have the little dip in them. So when I created the large bump and then another small bump, I knew that I was going to want to create a dip for the photo. So right now I'm just going through and still deciding on whether or not I'm going to do the torn pieces or the folded pieces, and I decide on the torn pieces. So then I go through and I'm going to tear all the bottoms off of those pieces. But you'll notice on the right, the way I trimmed that out and used my pencil to make those bumps first, I purposely left a gap in the right side for added interest so that I can fill in with some embellishments in the center and have the 3 girls, their silhouettes hug inside that little dip. And I think that's going to work perfectly. At least that's sort of my vision. So we're going to arrange that extra large sort of photo mat piece behind, and then we'll put the the houses in as a transition, and then we're going to put the other strips on, and then we'll decorate the bottom. And what I love about this is I titled this video "To Color or Not to Color," and I really love finding the color somewhere in the layout, but it doesn't have to be everywhere. Sometimes you can get too much. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And so in this, knowing that I really want to showcase every paper strip across the bottom, that's a lot of color. That's a beautiful amount of color. And then we have that zip strip that has the diagonal stripes that has a ton of color in it as well. So my instinct is that we could watercolor wash those houses, we could try blend those houses, we could do ink dauber rubbing on those houses, and all 3 of those things that I just mentioned are things that I've shown in the previous videos in the Memory Lane series, which again are all linked in the description. So you could choose any of of those techniques that we've already visited in the previous layouts in this series, but we could also leave those black and white. And I love that contrast. There's color in the photos. There's so much color in the strips across the bottom. There's color in the zip strips. I'm using colored photo mats, and there'll be some color in the embellishments. And I love that contrast of those stark white houses against all of that color. And I think it's going to be so, so cute. So now I'm arranging these photos into this series where Pepper just barely pushes her way in. And then when she pushes Ramsey Kate out of the way. And then I love the middle child. I love how Hattie Elaine goes to Avery Jean, the oldest child, and then we've got the youngest rambunctious child that just laughs and runs away, Ramsey Kate. So Avery Jean is the oldest one, and she's trying to take charge of the situation. You can see her face. She's trying to keep everyone in order so that they can get their photo taken. And they all have cute little matching floral dresses. So I thought this would be absolutely perfect. And then I love that patience prevails. I bet you anything Pepper had to go in the garage. So Pepper is more of a playful puppy. We have Charlie, who's an older dog. They have Charlie, and then they got Pepper as a companion for Charlie. But Pepper has a lot of energy. So now I've just arranged that. So I arranged those strips across the bottom so they were at about the 2-inch mark. And then I wanted to have the X peach strip, I think it's peach or melon, the 1.5 by 12-inch strip. I wanted that to be underneath those white houses, but not so far that there were huge gaps, but under enough, and then just so they barely cover at the 2-inch mark the strips that are hanging down. And that's going to be perfect, and they're going to be popped up with foam tape. And so I actually put the foam tape on the back of the white house border that we created, and then I put those pattern paper strips flush. And I'm envisioning possibly using the stamp set to create a title across the top, because it's pretty slim pickings on what is left from the sticker sheet. We have one little sticker that says spread your wings and fly, and then we have another sticker that says find joy in the journey, and then a couple little stickers, but we're going to need something to decorate across the top. But we also have the bits, because we filled our bits bin and our bin is full, so we can do a little bit of experimenting here and arrange those bits. I love when I'm able to stumble upon, a series of photos that are super similar, but this like left side almost looks like a film strip because you can almost see the action as it happens. It's probably less than a 30-second minute in there when my daughter Emily was snapping the photo. But you can see the whole fiasco as it unfolds on the left, and then the wonderful photo on the right. I just love being able to tell a little story and create a layout out of just that makes it a little bit different than just a snapshot. How often do we have them pose and we have them take photos, and it's sort of fun that there's a little mini story that we can tell when they're posing right before church. So I'm thinking of, again, a visual triangle. And if you followed close to my heart, you have heard visual triangle so many times over and over and over, because it is a foundational theory, or a foundational principle, I guess you could say, in scrapbooking that allows your eye to run across photos. So I'm working a little bit on a triangle. I want to somehow incorporate the yellow flowers. So if you tuned in to last week's video, we used all yellow. I was wanting to use the honey butter little mini floral, and we primarily colored those flowers with a little bit of water added to our ink pad ink by pressing that into our all-purpose mat, and we used a water brush, and we colored those with a little bit of Ballerina Sage and honey butter ink by just using a water brush. And then I love we also added a little bit of clear shimmer brush to that as well, but I love the concept of adding the watercolor wash flowers to the Cricut flowers to get a little bit of a contrast in texture and a contrast in technique. And so I'm loving how that's turning out. I'm not quite thinking the visual triangle is working. I think I need to pull that cluster over to the right. Now I can see how we're coming down across the large photo and back over across all of the 4 photos, series of photos. So last week we used 2 of the stencils in the Slimline #2 stencil pack, and we did not use these great leaves. Now, last week we used the florals and the diamonds, and there's actually 3 stencils in the Slimline stencil pack. And I thought that these leaves would look fantastic to add a little bit more texture underneath those Cricut leaves and those watercolor wash leaves. Now, I always like to practice, and these do look a little like palm leaves, but they actually end up working fantastic, and I'm in love with them. They're so pretty. So when in doubt and when you don't quite know if it's going to work, definitely do it on scrap paper, and I can see immediately that I'm going to love that. But always do it on scrap paper before you do it directly on your base. That way, if you make a boo-boo, or if it's not the right color, you've caught yourself before you get started. So I'm going to actually just do a couple leaves, and then I end up coming in a little later with more. So I do 2 kind of on one side of the corner and 2 on the other side of the corner, and I'm using sage ink. And I'm just kind of thinking about where that flower cluster is going to be and having it peek out the end. And then I'm actually going to add just a really light hazing of Seabrook ink over the top, just to kind of blend it and smooth it out just a little bit. And I think that's going to be perfect. I'm going to come back in with a few Cricut leaves as well, because we always have to build it up. It's always amazing when you first start building clusters, how you're thinking in your mind that it looks kind of clunky, and it doesn't really look beautiful. It just looks like chunks and clunks of bits, but it's amazing how it transforms when you just start adding dimension and you start adding a little bit to those clusters. Now, a little bit of a reminder that when I put together the Cricut flower, I did add a piece of foam tape in between the bottom white daisy layer and the next white daisy layer, and then I put the honey butter and the peach layer flush on top of that. And again, you can see that in full force from start to finish in the previous video. And so super easy to put together. And if you want to use thin cut flowers, if you want to find different flowers on the Cricut, honestly, there is so many, but I will be also having a Cricut option and a Design Space option at the end of this series, and a little cheat sheet option for those who want a little added help. I have one more layout in this series because there's going to be 6 layouts in the series, and this is just layout number 5. But once I get the layout number 6 completed, which will be this weekend, and that launches here on YouTube, then there will be the cheat sheet option with the Design Space option for those that want a little added help or don't want to do any thinking. If you just want to grab my Design Space file and cut all of the exact same pieces and they're already colored and sized, you can do that as well. Otherwise, you can dig deep in your stash and grab some thin cut flowers and thin cut leaves. You can also just simply simply use more from the stamp set. You have the stamp set. And so, when I'm deciding in the beginning what I want to use, I like to sort of do a little bit of a variety in the series of layouts, but also keep to the theme. So because we've used both the watercolor flowers and the Cricut flowers, I think either way would have looked really beautiful on this. I love that we've used a combination of both. So now I do want to come back in, and this is always a little scary because this is a piece that I've already fussy cut out, and I don't want to have to do that over. So I'm just going to be super careful, and I'm going to come in and add some leaves just so they come up under that house that's on the curve. And then we'll kind of make a little cluster to go along that curve, and then we'll have a little bit of texture with the stenciled leaves, and then we'll add some Cricut leaves on top of stenciled leaves, some watercolor wash flowers and Cricut flowers on top. And I love the combination where you're not just using all the same, you're using all different types of textures and all different types of technique to blend that all together, and it makes it such a rich layout when you use combinations like that. I love it. All right, so now you can see that I've made kind of a full swoop. We're going to be adding some leaves. We do already have our visual triangle, but I had one little leftover watercolor wash flower, so I pulled that down to sort of cover up a little bit of a transition on the photos. I think I did a pretty good job on the photos where I'm toggling them up and down so that you can still see every single thing that's happening in the photos, but certain bits of the photos are covered up by the houses. I do come in once the photos are in place, and I put foam tape on the houses themselves underneath, because right now I only have foam on the bottom because I needed the tops of the houses to be loose so that I could tuck things under. So now I'm just coming in with some of those leaf bits out of the bit bin. And that is adding so much. I'm using some of those that are rosemary. Some of those I'm breaking apart because I don't need the whole piece. I just need little pieces in the cluster, and that is helping so much. It's so coming together. I'm actually trying to, a lot of times when I think about clusters, I either try to go upward to add height, or I try to curve downward around something, around an edge, around a photo, to cover up a transition, to go along. So you can see the leaf I'm placing now goes along the edge, and I actually lose that leaf. I can't quite remember, and I end up using a different leaf. Sometimes when I'm playing with my pieces, I can't remember exactly where I had them, but the idea is that you have a longer bit at the edges that curves downward around photos, that curves downward around corners, or that curves upward to give height. Those are usually my two goals with flourishes and leaves, is to make the cluster curve or stretch upward. And it works great. It works great every time. So I'm just playing around here, and I'm using some smaller bits so they don't look quite so clunky. And I love the combination of the Cricut leaves with those stenciled leaves. Don't worry, we're going to do a little bit of filling here. I like the idea of adding the journaling with this, but those houses are so cute, and they're not going to jive. They're just not going to go right up on top of those houses. So I will probably trim those houses off and use that part of the sticker somewhere else, and then use the top part of that sticker for journaling. But I'm going to make a tag out of that house paper, and I always usually make my tags 2 by 3. I Don't know why. I've always made them 2x3, but when I'm hand making tags, they're almost always 2x3. Not that I don't need bigger ones sometimes, but I create 2x3. I cut about a 1/2 inch triangle off the corner, flip that over, put it in the other corner, and snip that off so that you get a perfect tag every time. Now I actually punch holes in these thinking that I'm going to use add some string or something, but I end up finding some great round stickers on the sticker sheet to put there. So I end up using the house tag, and then I want to use that journal piece, but I feel like there needs to be other color up there. So I make another 2x3 tag out of the honey butter floral. And so I do the same thing, cut about a little corner off, flip that over to the other side, cut the other corner off, and then you get the perfect tag every time. It's so fast and easy. So I'm a Cricut person, and I use the Cricut for so much, and I do use the Cricut for tags, but sometimes hand making tags is even quicker than the Cricut. Yes, gasp. So I found the little circles, and I add those to the tops of those tags, just kind of messing around with what color I might like. I'm going to add those, just adds a nice little finishing touch. And then still kind of looking at the sticker sheet and rearranging, and I'm going to add my journaling on there with my black Le Pen. That has been one of my most favorite things as of late. I love how it writes, and it works so great. So now I've added that journaling. I added the little sticker there that says, this is our life, which I like, but now it made a little bit of a gap in between those two houses and over on the left side that didn't kind of look cohesive all the way around. So luckily we have those extra leaves and flourishes in the bits bin, and I have that little partial house sticker that I cut off the top of the journal strip that I put down on the bottom. So the bottom left there, and then I'm sort of messing around with this little heart sticker, and I end up putting it on that second photo in and popping up the little single flower down there. If I haven't already popped that up, and it's really taking shape. Hooray. So we still have to have a title. And then in the previous 4 layouts, I used the heart stamp that comes in the stamp set as the embellishments. I didn't use any bling on layouts 1 through 4, and I'm going to continue that through this layout, layout number 5, and the next layout, layout number 6, just to stay commensurate, just to stay, just to stay with the theme. So I'm actually pulling the stamps off, and I'm actually experimenting with Love Our Story and this Love This Moment. I couldn't quite decide. I do feel like there's a little bit of white over on that right that I could maybe fit the title in, but then I felt like it really looked better on that upper left. And then I also love Our Story. I love that because there's a little bit more to the story than just standing and posing. They get to tell the story about Pepper. Now, they're definitely trying to train Pepper to not do that. So I'm actually experimenting because it can be very scary stamping directly on your layout. So I've made sure that I have a very moist stamp, and you can do that by re-inking your stamp. I have Intense Black. I've made sure that I have good coverage. I've stamped a practice on a little practice piece of paper. I made sure that all the way around my stamp was wiped off so that if I accidentally get a little off and I'm not straight up and down, that I don't get ink all over the page. And I've done the same thing with our story. You don't have to be nervous if you just go through those steps. Make sure it's wiped, make sure you have a moist stamp pad, and it'll turn out perfect, as you can see. So now I'm getting happy. That's what I always say when I'm getting close to the end. I'm getting super happy. So I'm coming in with a little bit of Ballerina and I think Seabrook. So I'm going to do Ballerina hearts and Seabrook hearts to embellish, and I think that I will be happy with that. I think I love it. I absolutely love the combination. I love all the textures. I love that we have a wide variety of colors, but then we have the contrast of the stark black and white houses, and it made it way more easy on us too, didn't it? Because we didn't have to color every one of those houses. We didn't have to watercolor them. We didn't have to tri-blend them. And of course, if you're out there and you want to make it your own, you can absolutely color those in. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you'll give all these techniques a try and you'll try this layout. Please hit subscribe, like, and follow, and shoot me a comment. I love hearing from each of you and sharing the love of paper crafting with all of my paper crafters out there. Thank you so much for sharing time with me and spending time, and I can't wait to see your take on this layout. Stay tuned for layout number 6, the final layout in the series. And if you want a little additional help, you can tune in and check out the cheat sheet and the design space file, as well as the Cricut options that will all be linked when the final video is posted. Happy scrapping, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.